So, hello and welcome to the Better Leaders Show. Today I'm talking to Sophie Legendre. Welcome, Sophie.
Happy to be here.
And we know each other, from the Inner Development Goals. We have an international meeting every month, the first Wednesday of the month. And since you are in Canada, you do the evening sessions. And since I'm in the Netherlands, I do like the morning sessions, and we're both in the team who organize this. And I asked you, and you just asked that before we went live, why did you invite me? I think I asked you because I think you know some things about leadership. And I chose the authenticity part in your bio as a focus for today. So Canada, and you've been working in government a long time, but you've also been working around the world for Canada.
Correct. First part of my career, I was actually part of the what we call it, the group of people who help Canadian companies do business abroad. So it's basically a consultant in an embassy helping Canadian companies. So that's where I started my career. I studied engineering, but I wanted to travel and discover the world. So I felt that going to the foreign service would be the easy way out. So I had the chance to live in Mexico, in Lebanon, in Beirut, and in Miami, Florida, in the U.S. And of course, with back and forth with Ottawa. So I did live, yes.
And,
So
and do you feel that you've been out enough now?
Well, there was a time where I did, we need to stop because we have two kids that are young adults now. But by the time they hit teenage, I felt, we needed to have a base. They were wondering, what are we? Because my husband is from Mexico. And they were growing up in the U.S. And one day my kid asked me, Mom, am I an American? They were going to a French school. And I said, well, let's go back to one of our own. You can create roots and figure out a little bit. So we did that. We wanted the kids to grow up. But recently we've been thinking, do we want to go out? I think the desire to travel or live abroad is kind of around there. So I don't know yet, but I'm at this point where, they're leaving the house soon. And, I've been saying, well, if I had an opportunity, maybe I'd go for a few months somewhere. I don't know.
Right. Interesting. And your job, because you have your own business, is also easy to do that, right?
Exactly. Coaching, facilitating, which is what I do, nowadays can be done anywhere. So we'll see. I mean, at this point, I'm based in out of Montreal, and this is where I am. But last fall I went to the summit, the IDG summit in Stockholm, and I with friends I had met. I mean, the pandemic gave us a great opportunity to realize that we can work with people everywhere in the world. And for me, that's when I started my business. And at the same time, I went on a quest to figure out how people were looking differently at how to be a leader, how to solve complex problems. And I did, I don't know if you know about, Theory U, the U Lab exercise every fall. So I did U Lab, and I got into a community around that. And people from everywhere in the world. And to this day, I have meetings every week with people that I consider friends that are everywhere in the world. So last fall, I spent 3 weeks in Europe. The summit was one stop. I went to Czech Republic with two friends I had met online, and we decided to organize a retreat together. Just was a good excuse to get to meet. And then I went to Portugal to meet another friend that I had met through this community. And so from Theory U, the Theory U community, one of the person I had known, Rafaela, told me about IDG. And it was like this big, there's moment of your life that you remember. And we were doing a walk. She's in Brazil, I'm in Montreal, and we were talking. It was with my AirPods, and she said, "Oh, I discovered this new thing," and she started talking about it, and I had this big, "Oh wow, I want to know about that community. This sounds very cool." And then I this was about a year and a half ago when I got into the IDG community, and I realized there's people everywhere in the world who are, for me, the IDG is more about, some people describe it as a framework, and yes, it's a framework, but I think it's a family of people who ask the same questions. There's a community, there's a way of approaching these questions. And I very much like the fact that nobody has answers. We have questions and we look at them together, right? And we're trying to say, well, we're in a complex situation out here in the world. And it seems to be that being more human is the best way out. So I fell into that group. It was like, wow, yeah. Getting to know the IDG community was like, oh, I'm not alone. I've been, as a coach, I was teaching a lot of the teaching or helping people know about certain skills, connection to oneself, understanding systems, humility, inclusion. These were all topics that I was trying to bring, and I had all these books and these interesting approaches, but they were all scattered. And then I saw the framework and I said, wow, this is all the little things I was trying to improve in myself and in people and teams and leaders I coach. And it was this big okay. And then I realized I'm not alone. Were you at the summit?
No, I wasn't. I was online.
You were online.
Yes.
And I don't know if the energy was the same, but being in that big room with 1,500 people and knowing there's another 7,000 online who all seem to think we're into a very complex situation in the world, and we really want to be finding solution, and finding solution starts with connecting with one another, starts with being authentic, starts with being human. It was something very powerful.
And if you look at with the ULAB theory, and maybe you can explain a little bit, but what did you learn about ULAB in relationship to leadership?
The U, for those who don't know, it stands for, a very simple 3-step process and a U shape. So the left-hand side is observe, observe, observe. And then there's a little moment at the bottom. It's the moment in the shower where you're not doing anything, where you have this aha moment. So you can do it in the shower, or you can go in the woods, or you can go for a walk, or you can meditate. But this, bring some stillness in yourself in any way that makes sense to you, and then prototype something. So you come out of that moment, and the right hand side of the U is is prototyping. And the link I would make with leadership is, I think, a lot of my quest of the past few years. I was trained as an engineer, being in government. I really learned leadership as something linear. You A, B, C. You do steps, you plan, you realize, and then you do. And what I found about the U is that there was this notion of not knowing everything at the beginning, the observe, just being present and paying attention, the taking time alone with yourself, with retreating and thinking, and then the permission to do a prototype, that whatever you do on the other side is not an end, it's something you're testing, and then you're starting again. And the shape I prefer is actually the circle. U theory talks about you, and it's you go back from the prototype and you go back to observing. And I think if there's something I have learned and I try to bring to my clients is a softness in everything we do. I think we've been taught about everything is a square, and there's clear answers, and there's a clear solution, and there's a best practice, and there's the improving. That's the vocabulary I grew up as a manager, and now I'm getting into a place where what we're looking at is a little softer. It's the same thing, but it's a cycle. It's not a plan. It's a cycle. It's about trying something without being 100% sure that it is the perfect answer, because there's no perfect answer. There is an answer. We'll try this one. I think technology has helped us. One of my big I did a part my between my government job and the coaching I do, that I did a lot of consulting in change management. I was helping companies implementing change, and one of the projects I did early on in my career was a company that was in the printing business, and they were shifting toward numeric online content. It's about 12 years ago. So I was asked to do, how-tos and instruction on how to use new platforms online. And I realized the employees were very young. And so there was nothing to be taught. The tools were, it was an online platform to communicate. People knew how to do that. But the big change that was happening were managers suddenly realizing that anybody in the company could publish an opinion, could talk to the boss, could communicate, that you could publish something, make a mistake, and within 5 minutes correct it and do it again. So all their system of revision and correction and editing and copywriting didn't have any sense, but so the big change that had to happen was the mentality of, I don't control everything. Mm-hmm. And it could be that the latest kid who entered the company has an answer that is very useful, and I should listen to him. And that was the beginning. This is probably where I decided I should learn coaching, because there's another way to, the change that we have to go through as leader is profound. I was taught as a leader that I should have all the information. I should have the answer. I should have a clear plan, strategic 3 to 5, 10-year plan. I should know the goals. I should have KPI. And now we're getting into a world where the same thing exists, but in a softer way. We're talking about intention. We're talking about collaboration. We're talking about listening to everybody's point of view. We're still moving. We're not stopping, but we're prototyping. You see methodology like Agile rising up, where you test, you do, you start again. So we're more of, and there's a profound, I think, shift that has to happen from within. And that's for me the quest. So when I grow up, I want to understand that.
And as a leader, how do you cope with that idea? I mean, you talk about the you or the circle, but still, you've been used to work in a certain way for so long. And with all these issues becoming clearer and clearer, you have to change the way that you work, right? So how do you do that? How do you I think it's about fear, right? So becoming fearless for this new situation and just go in without fear. But how do you train that as a leader? How do you learn this?
Well, the first answer is I don't know, but I'll try. I'll tell you about what because this is right into the core of my personal quest this year. I don't know if you saw, but I just made a post this morning, saying my word for the year is courage, which is so I've been doing a lot of thinking about it. I think the first thing is fear will always be there. I see fear as one of the members of my advisory board when I make a decision. And if I'm alive today, it's thanks to my fear. So I think the first thing that I'm learning is to thank my fear. But then it can't be the loudest voice on my advisory board. So that's the second thing. And then I think I can think about two things. One is learning to pay attention to what's happening within me and saying, oh, this is fear coming up. Okay, what's the fear? What is it about? What part of it is reasonable? So one I think is about connecting to me. The second one I think is about daring to do a step at the level I'm comfortable with. Being fearless, I think to a point would be dangerous. I wouldn't jump out of a plane without a parachute. I will have, and anybody who does extreme sport will tell you they have, I did scuba diving for many years, and the rules and the step you take to protect yourself are very thorough. So what are the steps that I'm making to feel safe? And I think the other element in what and I think the last thing is about not seeking a perfect solution, but advancing with curiosity. If you're seeking perfection, then of course you're setting the table for potential failure, and we tend to put the perfection level very high. So, but if you put yourself in the shoes of an explorer, my goal is to explore. My goal is to understand. My, curiosity is part of my quest. Then there's no right or wrong answer. I think, bringing curiosity and almost a trust that whatever happens will be okay. And I will work with what happens rather than I'm trying to achieve this very set, specific goal,
And how does that relate to, because now you have chosen the word, or the skill, I should say, courage.
Yes.
And how does that relate to authenticity for you?
How does courage relate to authenticity? I think it's a very good question. It's a juicy one, so I'll take a few seconds. In a way, I think when you're really authentic, you don't need that much courage, but I'm not that sure. But I think because for me, maybe I step back. For me, authenticity is also accepting I am afraid, right? I am afraid and I'm not sure I have everything, all the skills I need to do X. I may become nervous in this situation. So authenticity would be accepting that and maybe sharing it with somebody I trust and say, you know what, I'm going to be doing this thing and I'm not sure I have the skills or I have the tools. I'm just plain nervous, would you mind sitting beside me? Because I think I'd like to have you beside. So in a way, the more you're authentic is probably how courage becomes easier. And I think the real courage is to go within and really, really look at why is it I don't want to do this? Why is it I'm afraid?
Yeah.
And figure out which part belongs to me only. It's my old story. Which part is true? And what do I need to feel safe? And who do I trust to ask for help? So for me, all of this is being authentic.
Right.
If I do that, then courage becomes easier.
And do you believe that, or how do you believe that authenticity is now important for leaders?
Yes.
And why?
Yes. And I'm careful about using but I'll go to a big but. Yes, but I think authenticity is a symptom of something, not. I'm starting to wonder. I've been thinking about it a lot lately, and I don't think authenticity is a skill. I think you're able to be authentic. I think self-awareness is a skill um, that you need to. Um, Kindness is a skill that will help bringing authenticity. So if you have a room of people who are self-aware, who are have a very strong inner compass, who have communication skills that allows them to say what they feel inside of them and what their needs are um, in a non-violent, in a nice manner, then authenticity will appear. You know, I don't if I don't think if I take you or I in front of a room of 10 people, 10,000 people I don't know context, I know nothing, and I put a micro in front of you and I say be authentic, that we would be able to do it unless the topic we talk about is so dear to our heart that we'll be able to convey, or unless we know that the room is full of people interested in the topic, or we have a link with some of the people in the room. But if there's no connection, no tools to communicate well, no connection to yourself. And you know what? I just realized I'm going back to the skills of the IDGs, right? But I think when I see, and this is something recent, and I used to talk about authenticity a lot, and over the time I've realized you don't practice authenticity, you practice all the other skills. And then when you practice the other skills, then authenticity will emerge. Does that make sense? And so I think it is important, but if you ask a leader tomorrow, be more authentic, but they don't have the rest, you have the risk of having somebody who will come off as rude or as arrogant or as, and then you'll create the opposite, because authenticity will bring authenticity. You know, I show a little bit of who I really am, but to be able to show who I really am, I have to love who I really am. So I think that's the first part of the game.
I was, when you were just saying this, I was reminded of a session, not a session, a TV show, where it was an interview with somebody who talked about the state of the ice caps on the North Pole.
Mm-hmm.
And you just mentioned authenticity on a topic when you speak to 10,000 people. Well, he didn't speak to 10,000 people. He spoke to, I don't know how many people watched this show. He spoke on the camera, and he became very emotional about what's going on in nature, the knowledge that we have as scientists, and the non-action that is really happening in society to change this. And so he really became authentic by showing he cares so much about this topic that he became emotional. And I'm not saying you need to be emotional, to become emotional to show that you're authentic, but I think when you see that, when that's happening, you see that you really understand that this person is really related to this topic, to this issue that's going on. And I think if you want, if as a, and I want you to respond to make sure. So if you look at a team of people and you have a leader, authenticity is really important. So the people, can see the real you, can trust you, when times are good, but also when times are bad, that they feel that you are in pain or that something is going on and you're open about that. I think that makes a good leader,
Yes.
for people to follow you.
Yes. And I think absolutely. The one of the very one of my big learnings, I think it was my theory, 2021, 2022 and 2021, was learning to accept that I did not know. Was for me a big step, because you're taught that you should know. You read, and if you read more book, you'll finally know. And it was very fascinating to see a lot of the political and the science community into 2020 saying in front of a camera, we don't know. We don't know when people will go back to work. We don't know how to manage this situation. And I personally found it beautiful because it was on one hand stressful and but also I think it created a shift where everybody said, I have something to do. And when a leader says, I don't know, because the problem in front of us is so complex that I think that's the first step to collaboration. If you say, I know, you may have teamwork, but you won't have collaboration or co-creation, right? You say you do. But if you say, I don't know, I am afraid, but I believe in us, or I love us, which might not be, I believe enough would be a business appropriate way of saying I love us, but why not? We can find a solution. I have this very strong belief that the solution that will come up will be much more powerful, much more interesting than if the boss sat in a room and read and researched and tried to come in with, I know. So in a way, crying because you feel powerless, because you don't know, because you're afraid, gives the permission to everybody to say, I might have a little bit of an idea. I don't have the full solution, but I think I can do something, it's human nature. If you see somebody in need, most of us, you see kids, they do these exercises at 2-year-old and they see somebody who has a need, the kid will naturally go and help. So if you know that the person in front of you doesn't have the answer and is in need of help, your willingness to help, even a little bit, will be stronger than if the person says, I know, I'm in control, trust me, I'll do what I ask. So I think in a way this authenticity, and this is why I was saying from the beginning, the first step is to connecting with yourself, because we've been taught so much about never saying that we don't know. I think we come to believe that we do know. When my kids were growing up, at the beginning, I thought I had to know. And when they get teenage, I went into an area where, they were starting to use, they were at the age where social media was starting. I had no clue. I didn't know what social media was. I had not. So many times I told them, I have no clue. I'm going to teach you this. So we'll figure out together. They broke my they were the best teacher because I did not know. I truly did. And so, and I think we've managed to co-create ways of protecting them against something I didn't know. And a big part of authenticity, not the only one, but is being able to say, I don't know, I'm afraid, I don't have the plan, but I love you.
And that is, of course, not easy today, right? First of all, there's a lot going on, and it's um, it's not a problem. It's like it's these huge issues for standing in front of transitions, huge transitions, and there's not one. There's multiple. So there's so much going on, and we don't know. And what the business world wants, of course, is like a controllable environment, like that we can do something and it has some response that we know, and we can change something and something else happens. Um, so I also understand that this transparency, authenticity, um, is very difficult for leaders from an older generation to embrace, because it feels like so many things have changed, um, and so many things that we don't know, that it's
Mm-hmm.
scary to say, I don't know, because I always had the answers when people asked me what to do.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Not knowing is scary. Um, but you made me think about, there's a generational, definitely, but what I see on the, because I coach a lot of my clients are young entrepreneur, and what I see as the opposite is I'm so nice and I'm letting everybody do whatever they want, and the balance between I'm going to create a structure is, I think, it's the other side of authenticity, because authenticity is not about letting everybody run around freely. It's about creating a little bit of a structure, um, a soft edges that we're going to play within. This is what we're going to do. So on one hand, yes, I think the older generation generally, but the older generation still teaches us in business school, so that way of thinking is still very present. Is we should have the answer, you should have a plan, you should be structured. On one hand, and the authenticity fear there is of saying I don't know. The authenticity fear I see in the younger generation is I have an idea, I have an intention, I have a vision. This is where I want to go, and I'd like you guys to follow me. I don't know all the steps, but I have chosen that product, that idea, that solution, and we'll push through it together for 3 months, and then we'll reevaluate. So the authenticity fear, I think, in the younger generation is to owning whatever emerges inside of me, and I think both fear exists on both sides. I know, if I can think about me deciding to start my own business, and deciding, the name of my business is my name, and it took me a while to decide, am I going to that? And I said, no, I really want to start my business connecting to who I am, and I'll offer what I can give. And it, not that I'm better than anybody else, but it's, what's this say? Be yourself, everybody else is taken. So I can only offer what I have, and I'll be that. I'll give the best version of that, and I'll own it. And I'll own the fact that I prefer to do things this way. And if you join my team, there's a certain structure, not rigid boundaries like the old generation, but a direction, an intention that we'll follow. And it's okay to say, I'm going to stand up and say what I believe, and act. So I think there's fear on the, you know,
Yeah, interesting. I agree, and I didn't think about that part. Yes, it's, there's fear in younger generations because you feel that you won't give people boundaries because they have to discover themselves, but without any direction. Um, how will they be able to help you to accomplish the goal that you have as an entrepreneur? So that's you need to give them some direction, some guidance, so that they know where to go to help you, right?
in a way, yes,
Yeah,
or choose, make a choice. You know, I
right.
am going to focus on this type of technology. I'm going to focus on that segment of the market, and this is where I'm going to be. Um, and somebody else will. So there's also some sort of, um, and it forces you to go back to who am I? You know, and we always go back to who am I? Because if I really, as an entrepreneur, as a business founder, I often say to my client, you know, people come to me and they say, I want to change the culture of my enterprise. And I said, well, the culture of a company is the sum of the personality of the founders. So if you want to change the culture, you need to look within yourself. Something you may want to change, or you will accept who you are. Either way, or be truer to who you are, but understanding who you are very, you know, and what you can do and what you can bring will help you choose. This is where I will focus. I'm very good with, you know, AI, and I'm very creative, and this is the kind of business I will create. And I'll try to bring people to contribute to that. Because, and I'll always go back to who am I? What can I bring? And that's the business I'm going to do. Other business will happen, and maybe I'll collaborate or not, but going back to and daring. For me, my one of my big aha of the IDGs was the definition from humility. Humility is acting in accordance to the situation without worries about my own little self. It's nicer than that, but something along those lines. But humility is not about, oh, no, I won't do it. Humility is saying, you know what? This situation, I need to do it. I need to act. I need to own who I am and stand up and say that. Because whatever. And finding the fine line between taking all the space and not taking any space, which is also not humility. And for me, it was, whoa, you know.
Yeah. Yes, that's interesting. Well, I know that we could talk a lot more about this topic, humility and transparency and fear and authenticity and courage and all this stuff. But I also don't want to make the show too long for people to listen and to take action. And for people who want to learn more about you or the work that you do, they can go to your website, like you just mentioned, your name, Sophie Legendre. It's in the screen. And if next Monday the video and the audio will be in a episode on the podcast, and it will be on the blog, so you can also find the links there. It will be published on betterleaders.me. For now, this is the last episode in a season. It's going to be on a pause for a while. And so no next show next Friday, which I normally say. And thank you for joining us today and, you know, participating. And thank you, Sophie.
It was nice. I hope that was useful.
Yeah.
It was fun, at least.
Yeah. That's always good.
It was a pleasure. Take care.